mad about it, then I hope that people will realise.
You've stood up the central story in this allegation that you drove a very long way from home when everyone was told to be at home. If there was more leeway in these instructions than we thought, why didn't you tell everyone about that?
Well, with great respect, Gary.
Who else has driven that distance?
I'm trying to answer the question. With great respect, it's not just a simple matter in the regulations. The regulations describe various exceptional circumstances where it may not be possible to follow the rules. It doesn't say you must stay at home in all circumstances. It says that there are some circumstances in which you won't be able to follow these rules. And it seemed to me that I was in such an exceptional circumstance and I was trying to balance all of these very complicated things.
People will be staggered to hear you say that when the message was so clear: stay home. Is the fact that the Prime Minister can't do his job without you?
The guidance says, if you are living with children, I'm reading out the actual guidance. If you're living with children, keep following this advice to the best of your ability. However, we are aware that not all these measures will be possible. What we have seen so far is the children with corona appear to be less severely affected. It's nevertheless important to do your best to follow this guidance. Now, you know, it's and you know as well as I do that there are that the deputy chief medical officer has discussed this. There's been various discussion about it. If you've got if you've got a child that's 4 years old, and neither of you can look after him, the guidance doesn't say you've just got to sit there. So I think as I've said, I think I behaved reasonably in all of these given all the circumstances and the different things I had to try and weigh up. Jason Groves.
Hi. You blame the media for this mess that you've got the government into. Do you accept that whatever legal nicety you may have to say that you haven't broken the letter of these regulations, you've driven a coach and horses to the spirit of them, and that is why people are so cross about it? I
don't agree. I think that's not...
You don't agree?
No, I don't agree.
So let's go through it, shall we? I mean, you left London with your wife, who had coronavirus symptoms, completely against the regulations. You're up in Durham, and you decide to go for a drive on a weekend when, a few yards from here, the Foreign Secretary that weekend was telling us to stay at home and save lives. You went for a drive, you sat by a river, you went for a walk in the wood. I mean, you may or may not have a way of justifying this to yourself, and possibly there may be some legal loophole. But you've broken the spirit of it, haven't you?
No, I don't think that I have. Just to correct one thing, when we left, my wife did not have a cough. She did not have a fever. Those are the two symptoms that were mentioned. She was ill. She'd thrown up, but we didn't. As I said before, we didn't know whether or not she had COVID or not. Secondly, as I said earlier on, the walk in the woods was on private land. I didn't leave our property to go for a walk in the woods, and that's perfectly reasonable behaviour.
You stopped on the way back from Castle Barnard.
Yeah, I was driving back from Barnard Castle, and my child, the 4-year-old, was in the car seat in the back. He said, "Dad, I need to go to the toilet." We pulled into the side of the road. He jumped out with my wife. I don't think any reasonable person would say that I behaved that's bad behaviour.
I mean, you've plainly had a tough time. I don't think anyone would argue with that. But there's lots of other people who've had a tough time. I mean, I'd like to finish by we had a letter today from Andrew and Sarah in Wiltshire. Their daughter and son-in-law live 10 miles from them, and they've got 2 children. They came down with COVID, and they said, imagine our frustration living so near and yet not being able to help. It was a big sacrifice that we made, and they feel like mugs now. I mean, they want you to resign. Did you offer to resign when you saw the Prime Minister?
No, I have not offered to resign.
Did you ever consider it?
No, I did not. I have not considered it. As I said, I think I think it's reasonable to say that other people would have behaved differently in different ways in this whole situation. But as I stress,